Hi again, guys. Hopefully you've been working on your quadratic equation worksheet and everything was okay. Check with a partner next to you if you were having some trouble. But right now I want you to listen to this and take some notes. So get ready with your paper. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Today we're going to start talking about solving equations using quadratic techniques. And quadratic techniques mean putting things in an x squared form, so then we can either factor it or use the quadratic equation for us. So the first thing you need to do is you need to decide if it's possible, usually factoring or some other way to factor it. Maybe it might be an x cubed and then we use our difference or sum of two cubes. So let's take a look. Here's example number 1. Okay, x to the 4th plus 13x squared plus 36 is equal to 0. Okay, this is a trinomial, but we're used to seeing an x squared in this area, but now we have x fourth here and x squared here, so we can't really just factor it just because. We're going to use something called U substitution, or what I affectionately call as the U thing. U substitution. Okay? And so what we're going to do is I'm going to look at this and see if I can change this into a U squared somehow and change this to a U. Well, if I look at x squared and I square it, do I get x to the 4th? I do. So that's what allows me to say, okay, I'm going to make U equal to x squared, and then I'm going to rewrite my equation. So that would be 13u plus the 36 is equal to 0, and now I have to deal with the x to the 4th. Well, x to the 4th is really x squared squared. So this would be u squared. And now this is a normal trinomial that you're used to solving. So u plus 9, because I'm multiplying to get 36 and adding to get 13, and u plus 4 is equal to 0. We learned from before that we've got our zero product property, so u is equal to 9 or u is equal to 4. But the problem didn't ask us to solve for u, it asked us to solve for x. So now we have to resubstitute, and instead of u, we go back to our x squared. So x squared is equal to 9, and x squared is equal to 4. And now in our last class, we talked about how to solve this. We would take the square root of both sides. So then x is equal to, and keep this in mind, x is equal to plus or minus 3. And x is equal to, oh my goodness, you guys didn't catch me. These should be negative 9 and a negative 4. So this should be negative 9 inside and negative 4 inside. So this should be plus or minus 3i. And x equals plus or minus 2i. Okay. So this looks like we have 4 answers. We have a positive 3i, a negative 3i, a positive 2i, and a negative 2i. And we are supposed to have 4 answers. If you look back at the original, the degree, the highest exponent of our polynomial is 4. 95% of the time, if it has a degree of 4, it should have 4 answers. And there's your 4 answers. Okay, we're going to try another one. Alright, so here's our next problem. X minus 9x to the 1/2 power plus 8. So remember, the first thing is we need to ask ourselves if we can write it as a quadratic. Can I take this middle term right here and write it as a u and then square the x to the 1/2 to get x to the power of 1? Well, let's see, x to the 1/2. If I square that, that means I have to multiply these two together. What's 1/2 times 2? Yep, that's x to the 1st power. So that means I can rewrite it. So I'm going to make u equal to x to the 1/2 power. So now my equation reads like this. I'm going to replace that one first. Plus 8 is equal to 0. And this would be u squared because of the work we just did up here to prove it. So now we can factor that. So multiplies to 8 and adds to -9. So that would be u minus 8 and u minus 1 equals 0. Now I understand you're probably still not fast enough, but you should be trying to get to there. We didn't have to do the tent or the diamond method because there wasn't anything in front of u squared. Zero product property says that u is equal to 8 or u is equal to 1. But again, the problem didn't ask us to solve for u. It asked us to solve for x. So we have to resubstitute. So x to the 1/2 is equal to 8, and x to the 1/2 is equal to 1. And again, we learned the other day that this is the same thing as the square root of x is equal to 8, and the square root of x is equal to 1. And how do we get rid of our radicals? Right, we're going to square them. Square both sides. I'm just going to go ahead and do that to all of these pieces. So a square and a square root does what? Right, it cancels out. And then 8 squared is 64. Good. And then a square and a square root cancels out. So x is equal to 1. Okay. Now again, you should be double checking your answers in the originals to see if they work, but I'm not going to go through all of that right now. That's something you can do on your own. Okay. I want to show you a couple more before you get to work on your own. All right, here's another one. 12x to the 8th minus x squared plus 10 is equal to 0. So ask yourself, can you change this into a u? And then this is u squared. Well, what is x squared squared? Does it equal x to the 8th? That's our job to figure out. What do we do with these exponents? Yep, we multiply them together, and that's x to the 4th. So x to the 4th does not equal x to the 8th. So we cannot solve this using quadratic techniques. So we say not possible using quadratic techniques. We are going to discuss other ways to do it, but right now we're just worried about quadratic techniques. And I usually abbreviate that using the first letters of each word. So N, P, U, Q, T, or Naputa. Not possible using quadratic techniques. And that's all you have to say for now. We'll be able to solve it by the end of the year, but not quite right now. Okay? Let's try another. All right, we're going to try a cube because this one's a little different. It still has quadratic techniques in it, but obviously this is not quadratic because it's not squared. But you know how to factor this, so let's go ahead and do that. This is the sum of two cubes, correct? 343 should be on your cubes chart on your pink chart, or cubes table on your pink chart. So that is a short and a long, right? We still have to put equals 0. We match this sign. We know match this sign, and this one's always plus. Okay, what times itself 3 times gets me x cubed? Good, x. What times itself 3 times gets me 343? Look on your chart and let me know. I think I heard somebody say 7. You should be talking to me, not just sitting there like bumps on logs, remember? All right, so now how do we get this? We square this one and put it here. We square this one and put it here. And then we multiply these two together without regard to sign because we already put our signs in there. Well, this looks vaguely like the zero product property. Okay, so if this piece is equal to 0, what does x have to be? Right, x equals -7. Set, you're good. Now what about this? If this is equal to 0, what is x going to have to be? Well, if you did it right, remember this should never factor, so I can't factor this to c. So what's the other thing we need to use instead of factoring? Right, our quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You probably wouldn't get me to sing as much if I were standing in front of you. So you guys are so lucky. So now let's fill this in. Remember, a is in front of the x squared, b is in front of the x, and c is your last term. So x equals a negative 7 plus or minus the square root of a negative 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 49 all over 2 times 1. So now we need to do some math. X equals a negative and a negative make a positive, plus or minus the square root. Negative 7 squared is 49. And then 49 times 4 is 196. Negative 196 all over 2. So that simplifies to 7 plus or minus the square root of a negative 147 all over 2. I definitely can take the negative out as an I, because the square root of a negative 1 is I. But 147, I should check to see if I can break that down. And, because I did my math earlier, I can. 147 is the same thing as 49 times 3. So, I can get 7 plus or minus the square root of a negative 1 times 49 times 3 all over 2. Simplify again. 7 plus or minus square root of 49 is 7. Square root of a negative 1 is I. The square root of 3 has to stay inside. All over 2. So we had x cubed, and so we should be looking for 3 answers. Did we get 3 answers? We did. We have, let me change the colors. We have this one answer, and this is actually 2 different answers. 7 plus 7i, the square root of 3 over 2, and 7 minus 7i, the square root of 3 over 2. So we would write our answer as negative 7, and then 7 plus or minus 7i, the square root of 3, all over 2. And there you have it. Okay? All right, now you should be able to work on the last worksheet that I left you. It is matching, but yes, you need to show your work. So double check, and everything is due next class. I will see you either on Wednesday or Thursday, whichever day this is. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in a couple.